Hello everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Ce matin, je veux m'adresser aux millions de Canadiens qui font des choix responsables pour s'assurer leur sécurité et celle de leurs proches. Je sais que cette pandémie est frustrante. It's frustrating that after 2 years, the battle against COVID-19 is still dominating so many parts of our lives. This virus affects us all. 2 of my own children have now contracted it, and this morning I learned I tested positive for COVID-19 as well. I feel well and have no symptoms. Of course, I'll be working remotely this week, and we'll keep following public health guidelines. I want to take this opportunity to remind Canadians to please get vaccinated. It's a challenge that my family and I are facing, but there's nothing unusual or special about it. It's a challenge too many Canadians and people around the world know all too well. Durant cette pandémie, il y a des gens qui ont perdu des êtres chers. Nos travailleurs de la santé continuent de faire un travail acharné. Les scientifiques travaillent jour et nuit pour s'assurer qu'on ait des vaccins pour se protéger. This pandemic is not over, and we have to be there for one another. And as we continue to have each other's backs, as we steel ourselves for the challenges ahead, I know you're wondering about what you saw in our capital city this weekend. As my friend Irwin Cotler said on Saturday, freedom of expression, assembly, and association are cornerstones of democracy, but Nazi symbolism, racist imagery, and desecration of war memorials are not. It is an insult to memory and truth. Hate can never be the answer. Over the past few days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. La statue de Terry Fox et la tombe du soldat inconnu ne sont pas seulement des symboles du passé. Ce sont des points marquants de notre histoire qui représentent des héros canadiens et les valeurs pour lesquelles ils se sont battus. Les sacrifices de ces héros nous ont donné la chance de bâtir un Canada meilleur. Tous les Canadiens ont le droit d'exprimer leur opinion ou leur désaccord avec leur gouvernement, mais ils n'ont pas le droit de menacer ou de harceler leurs concitoyens ni de propager des messages de haine. I want to thank the many Canadians who've made donations to the Shepherds of Good Hope and to the Terry Fox Foundation in response to what they saw this weekend. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians. Be courageous and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance and hate. En ces temps difficiles, tous les politiciens doivent démontrer du leadership responsable. On doit travailler pour rassembler les gens de manière positive. On doit lutter contre la division et la peur avec les faits. To the politicians exploiting people's fears, I ask you to think long and hard about the consequences of your actions. To the nearly 90% of truckers across the country who've gotten vaccinated, who continue working hard to keep us fed and keep our economy moving, thank you. Truckers have tough jobs. Long hours on the road, days away from their families. Real challenges, particularly over the past 2 years, as they've continued to step up to put food on our shelves and on our tables, to support us with life-saving medication and supplies. We have relied on you, and you can rely on us to continue to stand with you and allow you to do your jobs safely. Almost 90% of you are doing exactly that, right? Exactly that. And we thank you deeply for everything you've done. The behavior on display this weekend does not represent you. And to Canadians at home, watching in disgust and disbelief at this behavior, wondering how this could have happened in our nation's capital after everything we've been through together, this is not the story of our pandemic, of our country, of our people. Canada is strong because you are strong. Pendant près de 2 ans, les Canadiens ont fait preuve de force, de générosité et de respect. Vous avez démontré votre courage. Vous avez fait d'énormes sacrifices. For nearly 2 years, you've been there for each other as neighbors, friends, and fellow Canadians. I think of the moms and dads who looked after their families, the kids who stepped up in so many different ways, seniors who stayed strong in our darkest days, volunteers throughout our communities who supported our most vulnerable, frontline workers from truckers to store clerks who've kept our shelves stocked and made sure we have food on our tables, healthcare heroes who've saved countless lives and continue to do so. We know you're tired, and yet you do not stop. You inspire us. Canadians support you. We're in your corner. All of you, you are the story of this pandemic, not the convoy. Cette pandémie, c'est aussi l'histoire de millions de personnes qui ont fait les bons choix, qui se sont fait vacciner et qui ont fait des sacrifices pour assurer leur sécurité et celle des autres. Je peux vous dire que je vais continuer d'encourager les gens à se faire vacciner, que ce soit pour les doses de rappel ou les vaccins pour les enfants. Je vais continuer d'être là pour vous. I wish I could tell you that there are no more difficult moments ahead. But we all know I can't say that. What I can say is that this government will continue to have your backs. We will continue to be there for you as long as it takes, with as much as it takes. That's how we've all gotten through this pandemic so far, and that's what we and I will continue to focus on. Because we believe in you. Canadians are compassionate, kind, strong, and resilient. You elected us all to get big things done, and with the return of Parliament, we all have work to do. Later today, I'll be participating in question period, an important part of our democratic system, alongside parliamentarians who, despite threats and intimidation, will continue to serve you, Canadians, and work together to deliver results for people. This afternoon, we'll be introducing legislation to ensure we continue providing as many rapid tests as possible to the provinces and territories. And tonight, I'll be virtually addressing the House of Commons about the situation in Ukraine. I'll be talking about the importance of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law in the face of Russian provocation. In this difficult time, more than ever, we must stay true to our values, to who we are as Canadians. As Canadians, we stand up for what's right, and mostly, we stand up for each other. That's how we've gotten through this so far. That's how we'll continue to get through this That's how we remain true to who we are. Merci, mes amis.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We'll now start the question period for 20 minutes, starting with the phone today. Opératrice, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. Please press star one at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur l'étoile 1 maintenant pour poser une question. The first question is from Mia Rodson, the Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm wondering, a lot of the leaders or organizers of this convoy have asked to meet or at least hear from you about what's happening in their demand. Have you or will you or anyone from your government meet with them or negotiate with them in any way?
My focus is standing with Canadians and getting through this pandemic. The way to get through this pandemic is to continue making the challenging choices and sacrifices as citizens, as individuals, as communities, to keep each other safe, to trust science, to trust facts, to continue being there for each other. That is my focus. That is what I will stay focused on.
Can you explain the reason why you won't participate or meet with them? I mean, you've attended rallies on the Hill in the past, including during a Black Lives Matter protest and others. Is there a reason that you can give as for why you will not discuss or have any negotiations with this particular group?
I have attended protests and rallies in the past when I agreed with the goals, when I supported the people expressing their concerns and their issues. Black Lives Matter is an excellent example of that. But I have also chosen to not go anywhere near protests that have expressed hateful rhetoric, violence towards fellow citizens, and a disrespect not just of science, but of the frontline health workers and, quite frankly, the 90% of truckers who have been doing the right thing to keep Canadians safe, to put food on our tables. Canadians know where I stand. This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question est de Laurence Martin,
The next question is
Radio-Canada.
from
La parole
Laurence
est à vous.
Martin from Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour, M. Trudeau. Je me demandais comment
Yes,
est-ce que vous
good
allez
morning, Mr.
faire
Trudeau.
pour apaiser la grogne
What are you going
exprimée
to
dans les
do
derniers
to
jours à Ottawa. Je
appease
comprends qu'il y a
some
des
of the
éléments
backlash that we've
extrémistes
seen in
dans le
Ottawa
mouvement,
in
mais il y a
recent
aussi beaucoup de gens qui
days?
ne le sont pas, qui étaient
You
à
said that
Ottawa.
some people
Qu'est-ce
have
que vous allez
been
faire
violent
pour
and
apaiser
aggressive,
leur
but
colère?
many people have
Tout
not. So what
d'abord,
are you going
je
to do
pense
to
que
appease their anger?
tout le monde à travers le pays, qu'il
Answer.
soit ici à Ottawa ou non,
First of all,
est
I think that
frustré.
everyone across the country
Tout le monde a de la
in
grogne, tout le
Ottawa or
monde est tanné
elsewhere
de cette
is
pandémie.
frustrated.
Tout le monde est
Everyone is
épuisé,
sick
tout le
of
monde
this
veut que ça en
pandemic.
finisse.
Everyone is tired. Everyone wants
Tout
to
le
be
monde
done with
voudrait
it.
bien qu'on puisse dire « OK, c'est fini »
Everyone would
puis
love
qu'on
to be
retourne
able to say,
à
okay,
ce qu'on
it's over,
voudrait faire.
and move on.
Mais la vaste
But
majorité
the
des
vast
Canadiens
majority of Canadians,
savent que c'est pas en rouspétant
know
qu'on va finir
that
cette pandémie,
that's not how we can end this
c'est en se faisant
pandemic.
vacciner.
The way out of this pandemic
C'est en
is getting
écoutant
vaccinated.
les meilleurs conseils de santé publique.
It's listening to public health
Et
advice.
la meilleure façon qu'on va pouvoir passer à travers,
And the best
la
way
meilleure façon qu'on va pouvoir continuer d'être
to
là
get
les
out
uns
of
pour
this
les autres, c'est
pandemic and to
justement
continue to be there for each
en
other
démontrant qu'on comprend
is to
l'importance
show that we
de
understand
suivre la
the
science,
importance of
les faits,
following science
les experts en
facts,
santé,
and health
les
experts.
experts en santé publique. C'est comme ça qu'on va sortir de cette pandémie.
That's how we'll get out of this pandemic.
Et c'est sur ça que je vais me concentrer.
And that's what I'm going to
En
focus
suivi,
on.
Laurence?
A follow-up question?
Certains vous accusent d'avoir politisé
Some
la
people have
question de la
accused you of
vaccination
politicizing
obligatoire
the question
durant la
of
campagne
mandatory
électorale. Qu'est-ce que
vaccination
vous répondez à
during
ceux qui
the
disent
election
que vous portez
campaign?
une partie de
What
la
would you say to
responsabilité
those
pour
who
la
say
grogne
that
qu'on
you
voit
share
s'exprimer à
part
Ottawa
of the
depuis quelques jours?
responsibility for the anger that we've
Les
seen over this
Canadiens
issue?
ont choisi de se faire vacciner
Canadians
à un taux plus
chose to
élevé
get vaccinated.
que presque
And they
n'importe
did
quel
so at a
autre
higher
pays
rate than in
dans le
almost
monde.
any other country in the world.
On a vu à chaque étape
At every
les
step,
Canadiens choisir
we have
d'être là
seen
les uns pour les
Canadians
autres.
choosing to be there for each
En
other.
plus d'avoir un taux de vaccination plus élevé que beaucoup
Not
de
only
nos
do we
pays
have a higher
pairs,
vaccination rate than many of our peer
on a
countries,
aussi pu protéger et notre système de santé
we've also been able
et
to protect
nos
our
aînés
healthcare system
et
and our seniors,
voir rebondir notre économie de la
and
bonne
we've been
façon.
able to get our economy going.
Je comprends qu'il y a certaines personnes qui choisissent de rejeter la science,
I understand that there are
qui
some
choisissent
people
de
who choose to
rejeter
reject science,
l'entraide
who
et le
choose to
service et les
reject
sacrifices que font la
the
vaste
sacrifice
majorité des
that might be
Canadiens.
required to
Mais
help
c'est leur
our fellow
choix.
citizens.
Mon choix,
But
c'est de
that's their
continuer
choice.
d'être là
My choice
pour les
is to continue to be
90% des
there for the
Canadiens
90% of
qui,
Canadians
oui, sont tannés,
who are fed up with
mais
this
qui savent
pandemic,
que la
but
façon qu'on va
who
passer à
know that
travers,
the way out of it
c'est en restant solidaires, en se
is
respectant les uns les
by
autres
standing in solidarity with each
et en
other,
suivant
showing
les
respect
les
for each
consignes
other,
de
and
santé
following
publique.
public health advice.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Tom Perry from CBC News. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our questions. Supporters of this movement will say that it's a small minority of people in this protest who are causing trouble. So is it fair to focus in on the obviously terrible behavior of some and paint all protesters with that brush?
I think, obviously, the right to free expression, the right to assembly, the right to make your displeasure known in a democracy is extraordinarily important and needs to be heeded and respected. But there have been many, many protests over the past years that I've seen, that I've been part of, that I've watched from a distance on Parliament Hill and elsewhere, where people come together angry about a certain thing, wanting something else to change, that don't see the level of hateful rhetoric, of swastikas, of abuse towards their fellow citizens. There is always a right to protest peacefully that I and others will defend fully as part of this democracy. There is not a right to incite violence, to perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred. And I think anyone who is part of this group who is disgusted by what the folks protesting alongside are doing needs to step up and take responsibility, condemn these actions, and look for other ways to express their displeasure.
Following up.
You talk about politicians exploiting people's fears. Who are you talking about, and what impact do you think they're having?
I think all politicians need to think very carefully about who they're supporting, about what messages they're putting out. We have seen over the past many, many months conservative politicians sharing disinformation about vaccines, encouraging conspiracy theories online. And I think Aaron O'Toole is going to need to reflect very carefully on how he's walking a path that supports these people who do not represent truckers, let alone the vast majority of Canadians.
Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question est de Boris Proulx, Le Devoir.
Next
La
question
parole
is
est à vous.
from Le Devoir.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Est-ce
Thank
que
you,
vous
Prime Minister.
estimez faire quelconque concession aux camionneurs?
Do you intend to make any concessions to these truckers?
Le défi, les
Answer.
défis auxquels on est en train de faire face dans
The
nos chaînes
challenges that we're
d'approvisionnement
facing in terms of
ne
supply
sont pas
chains
dus aux politiques
are
de
not
vaccination,
due to
mais sont dus
vaccination policies.
à la COVID-19.
They're due to COVID-19.
La meilleure façon de passer à travers ces
The
moments
best way
difficiles pour les
to get
camionneurs,
through this
pour
difficult
tous les
time
Canadiens,
for truckers and for all
c'est en
Canadians
continuant de respecter les
is to
consignes de santé
continue
publique,
to follow
en
public health
continuant de se
advice,
faire vacciner comme
continue
presque
to get
90%
vaccinated,
des
as nearly
camionneurs
90%
l'ont
of
fait.
truckers already have,
C'est sur ça que je vais me
and to
concentrer,
focus on
pas
those
sur
priorities.
ces manifestants qui ne
I'm not going to
respectent pas
focus on the
les faits,
protesters who
la science,
don't respect
ni
science,
pour plusieurs nos principes
evidence,
démocratiques.
or in some cases, our democratic principles. Follow-up
Merci.
question?
En suivi, des
Yes.
manifestants disaient que le Canada était à l'origine de la décision
protesters are saying
d'imposer la vaccination obligatoire de
that
leur côté.
Canada was
Pouvez-vous
at
nous dire si
the
vous avez
root.
fait pression
Canada
sur
had
l'administration
pressured
Biden
the
pour
Biden
qu'ils fassent la même
administration
chose que le
to
Canada?
implement
Depuis les
vaccination
débuts,
mandates for truckers
on
on
m'a
their side
souvent
as well.
posé des
Can
questions
you tell us if
sur
that's the case?
l'alignement ou le
Answer.
non-alignement entre nos politiques ici au
From the beginning
Canada
of the pandemic, I've
par rapport aux
answered a lot
frontières
of questions
avec les
about
Américains.
whether our
Il y a eu des
policies were
choses sur lesquelles
aligned
on
with
s'est aligné,
the
on s'est très bien
Americans or
travaillé. Il y a eu
not.
d'autres choses
Now, there are
sur
some
lesquelles on
situations
est
where we
moins
were very
alignés,
well
mais
aligned
à
with the
chaque
U.S.
fois,
and we worked very closely
je
together. And in
démontrais
other
et
cases,
j'insistais
that was less
que chaque
so.
pays peut
But I
et
have
doit
always
faire ses
insisted
propres
that each
décisions par
country
rapport
had
à
to
sa
make its own
sécurité publique. Mais
decisions
évidemment,
in terms of
puisque nous
protecting its own security.
suivons la même science
But obviously,
et
since
les mêmes genres de conseils
the U.S.
d'experts, ça ne doit
administration
pas
and
être
our government are
surprenant que
following the
les
same
mêmes
scientific advice,
principes sont en
it
jeu
shouldn't be a surprise
quand on amène des
that
mesures pour
the
protéger les
same
citoyens.
types of policies are in place to protect
Operator,
citizens.
next question.
Thank you. Merci. The next question from Tanda McCharles, Toronto Star. Please go ahead.
Yes, Prime Minister, you said that Aaron O'Toole has to think carefully, but he did meet with some truckers on Friday. Do you think that was an inappropriate gesture of support to truckers, or specifically about anyone else in terms of his caucus? And can you speak to McInerney's participation?
As part of our job as politicians, every single day, we make decisions about who to meet with, who to respond to, how to respond to them, who to engage with, how not just our engagements, but our example impacts on public discourse. If we choose to put up with and tacitly support conspiracy theorists and folks peddling disinformation, that's a reflection on what we choose to do as politicians and who we are as leaders. Obviously, I'm going to trust in Canadians' understanding of the kind of responsible leadership that is needed right now. And I'm sure Canadians are watching what all politicians are doing right now and remembering who is choosing to stand up for what and for whom and what choices they are making as leaders. I think through this pandemic, Canadians have seen and have a right to expect responsible leadership. And unfortunately, that's not what we've always seen from the likes of Aaron O'Toole or even more, Maxime Bernier.
Following up.
Given the behavior you outlined today, what do you want to see the security forces on Parliament Hill and in downtown Ottawa do about the situation?
Well, first of all, I'd like to make sure that people are safe, first and foremost, that small businesses, restaurants in Ottawa can get back to work, that citizens can go to their jobs, that parliamentarians can continue to do the important work of serving Canadians, of upholding our democracy. Yes, there is a right to protest. There is a right to make your voices heard loudly and clearly. But there is not a right to shut down our democracy or our democratic processes. There is not a right to abuse, intimidate, and harass your fellow citizens who are trying to go about their business, trying to live their lives, and not necessarily in agreement with what you are doing.
Opératrice, prochaine question.
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, Raphaël
The
Pirot,
next question
Agence
is from
QMI. La
Raphaël
parole est à vous.
Pirot.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau. Je voulais
Yes,
savoir,
good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau.
donc, le ministre des Transports avait dit récemment
The Minister
quoi
of
il voulait aller de
Transport
l'avant avec,
recently said
peut-être, il l'avait pas dit clairement, mais peut-être aller de l'avant
that he
avec
wanted
l'obligation
to
vaccinale
perhaps
pour les
move forward
camionneurs
with a
entre
vaccination
les
mandate
frontières. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose que
for
votre gouvernement,
truckers traveling
quel
across the
votre
border.
gouvernement pense encore?
Is that something that your
On est, comme vous
government is
savez,
considering?
très clair sur le besoin du plus grand nombre possible de gens de se faire vacciner. On a amené des mandats de vaccination pour la fonction publique fédérale. On a amené des mandats de vaccination pour ceux qui veulent voyager à bord d'un avion, d'un train. Nous allons continuer d'encourager les gens de se faire vacciner. Pour l'instant, les mandats pour les camionneurs s'appliquent à la frontière canado-américaine.
The mandate for trucker only applies to the U.S.-Canada border.
Et donc, mais je voulais savoir, est-ce que
Follow-up
c'est quelque chose
question.
qui est encore sur la table?
Is this something that's still on the
Et si c'est
table?
encore sur la table, pensez-vous que ça risque de jeter
And
de l'huile
if
sur
it
le feu?
is, do you not think that this might
Je
add
veux
fuel
pas
to the flame?
aller trop loin dans des hypothétiques. On est en train de regarder, d'amener des mesures concrètes qui vont continuer de protéger les Canadiens. Et quand on pense que les camionneurs sont à presque 90% déjà vaccinés, on sait que même sans avoir des mandats supplémentaires, des mandats domestiques, les gens sont en train de faire la bonne chose. Mais comme vous savez, depuis 2 ans, on a vu énormément de mesures et de choses qu'on a dû faire auxquelles on n'aurait pas pu s'imaginer il y a 3-4 ans. On va continuer de suivre la science, on va continuer de faire tout ce qui est nécessaire pour garder les gens en santé, en sécurité. On va se concentrer sur les mesures qu'on est en train de faire maintenant et pas amener des théories hypothétiques sur les prochaines étapes qui pourraient être nécessaires ou peut-être pas.
Future or may not be. Operator, next question.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Marika Walsh, the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. Question, Marika Walsh, the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, Prime Minister. Thanks for taking our call today. I just want to follow up on, sorry, I'm trying to mute my phone. I'm just trying to follow up on some of your responses about the protesters. I understand the concerns around many of the actions for many of the protesters, but I'm wondering if you as the Prime Minister need to engage with the fears and the concerns that others in the crowd raised about the vaccine. There seems to be a real concern for many of them about the safety of that vaccine, and I'm wondering if you are avoiding addressing that by only focusing on the much more hateful and nefarious elements of the protest this weekend.
Marika, anyone who thinks that I haven't been talking about how safe vaccines are hasn't been listening to everything I've been saying over the past 2 years. Vaccines are safe and effective. The way we get through this public health crisis, get back to the things we love, is by trusting science, by trusting the facts, by being there for each other, by stepping up for each other. We have been hearing people hesitant about getting vaccinated for well over a year now. And we have been reaching out to them, community by community, individual by individual, at the highest level, but also in interpersonal contacts, to reassure people that vaccines are safe and effective, and that they are the way to get through this pandemic. So, yes, the concerns expressed by a few people gathered in Ottawa right now are not new, not surprising, are heard, but are a continuation of what we've unfortunately seen in disinformation and misinformation online, conspiracy theorists about microchips, about God knows what else that go with the tinfoil hats. We have been clear every step of the way that the work our frontline health workers, the work our scientists and researchers are doing, the people at Health Canada, the people working on these vaccines all around the world, is the work that will get us through this, get us back to the things we love.
Operator, last question.
Thank you. Merci. Donc, la dernière question, Michel Sabat, la presse canadienne. La
Final
parole est à
question
vous.
from la presse canadienne.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Yes.
Avez-vous retenu un
Hello, Mr.
quelconque message de ces 3 journées de manifestations
What
historiques
message
sur
have
la
you taken
colline du
away
Parlement
from
et
these
envisagez-vous d'une
3-day
quelconque
historic
façon
protest on the Hill?
d'ajuster votre politique?
And have
Je
you
pense
taken away
que
anything
ce
that
qu'on a
would
vu, c'est que oui, il y a
lead you
des
to
gens
change your position on
qui
anything?
hésitent encore à se faire
Answer.
vacciner, mais en
What
même
we've
temps,
seen is that yes, there are
dans la
people who have
réaction des
hesitated to get
Canadiens d'un bout à
vaccinated,
l'autre,
but at the same time,
pas seulement
we know that
aux
Canadians
expressions de haine et d'intolérance qu'on a
across
vues
the country
parmi ces manifestants, mais aussi dans le message
are
de
against the hateful
liberté et
messages
de
that we've
choix.
seen.
Les Canadiens sont en train de dire, moi, ma liberté, c'est la liberté de retourner à des choses que je voulais faire avant, et la façon d'assumer cette liberté, c'est de se faire vacciner. Moi, mon choix, c'est d'être là les uns pour les autres, parce que c'est comme ça qu'on a créé ce pays. C'est en étant là les uns pour les autres qu'on définit ce que c'est d'être Canadien. Alors, en même temps qu'une petite minorité marginalisée en train de respecter, de manifester, la vaste majorité des Canadiens sont en train de dire, ben voyons donc, c'est en continuant d'être là les uns pour les autres qu'on va passer à travers. On est tous d'accord. On veut en finir avec cette pandémie. Mais la grande majorité des Canadiens savent très bien que la façon qu'on va en finir, c'est pas en manifestant contre la pandémie, c'est en se faisant vacciner.
Following up.
Les abords du Parlement, M. Trudeau, les abords du Parlement sont-ils sécuritaires et les policiers devraient-ils évacuer le secteur?
J'ai énormément confiance dans nos services de sécurité publique qui font un travail remarquable dans des situations extrêmement difficiles. Je veux remercier la police d'Ottawa, la GRC, le service de protection parlementaire et tous ceux qui ont travaillé avec acharnement cette fin de semaine pour s'assurer de minimiser les dégâts et l'harcèlement et l'intimidation des citoyens qu'on a vu à Ottawa. C'est pas fini, mais ils vont continuer de faire leur job et je sais que les Canadiens à travers le pays peuvent avoir confiance dans ceux qui choisissent de servir le bien du public.
Operator, would it be possible to put Marika Walsh on the line? She didn't get her follow-up.
Perfect. Thank you. And we don't have Marika Walsh in the queue anymore. I'm sorry.
Thank you. This is what ends today's press conference.
Merci tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.